Well, hello everybody, and we have another special guest on the show today, Danny Gormally, a British GM, member of the England team who's got some fantastic results to his name, and he also he brought out, just released now, is a new book, Pandemic Shark: A Journey Through the World of Chess Improvement, and uh, and last year there was another book you released, the Comfort Zone: Keys to Your Chess Success.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Nigel. Yeah, I mean, I've got the pandemic shot with me. I got a copy through yesterday, so I mean, I could show it on the camera if you like.
Why not? Why not? Good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the book, and
Who's the publisher, Danny?
it's called Thinkers Publishing, and it's basically quite a new company that was set up by a guy called Daniel who lives in Belgium, and
Yeah, I
also
know.
Romain.
He's one of my Facebook friends.
Yeah, exactly, and also Romain Edouard, and it's basically about, generally it's not really a very new book for me because I've written similar books before where, like I did a year in the chess world, in the sense that a lot of it is about following me around the English chess circuit, describing what a terrible life it is to be a chess player. And so the blurb, I write my own blurbs, and it says, in his attempt to understand this recent phenomenon and try to explain the difference between amateur and professional chess player and himself and the very best players in the world, Gormally embarks on a journey through a world that includes chess punks on Twitter, drunken yobs at a weekend congress, beautiful content streamers, obviously not including myself,
And us.
and a seemingly unbeatable chess computer. So I talk about what amateur players need to do to improve. I talk about like working with Zoe Varney, how I've helped her to try and improve, mainly through psychological advice, really, and also talk about what it's like, to play against the pluses and cons of playing against chess computers. Because I know you guys are like, kind of maybe in the anti-computer camp to some degree, but.
Well, I mean, we've got a few questions for you because obviously,
Sure.
you've got a lot of interesting viewpoints. And my first question really is, what's it like being a chess professional in 2022? I mean, the person who relies a lot on playing rather than coaching or writing, which I think you've pointed out in the past is probably where a lot of people go these days. They get into this because it's the only way of making serious money. Especially in the chess world. I mean, you'd be a pauper if you stayed on the weekend circuit, wouldn't you?
Well, that's a very good point, Annie. I mean, to be honest, there's only a handful of people that are still making money primarily through playing chess. I mean, just to give you an idea, probably the most amount of money that I made last year would have been, I made about £12,000 last year, which is peanuts, really. You can't live off that. It's less than what a bin man makes, right? But mostly that was from Chessable course, and also work that I did for Simon Williams' website. As far as making money from playing tournaments, it's almost non-existent. So, unless you're like in the very top echelon of players, you can't make a living from playing chess. I mean, I played a tournament in Blackpool recently, and the first prize was, I think it was 700, which is quite decent. But it probably would have been about 700 25 years ago, 30 years ago, right? It would probably be something similar. My total expense was about £300. I paid a train ticket to get there, which is quite expensive, the hotel. And I ended up coming equal first with about 6 others. It's totally ridiculous. So I ended up winning about, I don't know, 170 quid. So I made a loss on the tour, even though I came equal first.
That's insane. It's insane.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think the problem with being a professional chess player as well that I've experienced is you don't get any support. There's no support network. Now, if you're a professional footballer or a professional tennis player, you have people around you to help you. And if you're a professional footballer, you're expected to turn up at the ground every day, the training ground. You get people instructing you what to do. If you're a professional chess player, all the motivation has to come from yourself. And that is something that I've struggled with. So in terms of putting the hard work in, to get to the next level is something that I've probably not been able to do. And really, I would say that most professional chess players in this country are more professional chess players because they don't really want to do normal jobs and they enjoy the social side of chess, you know, having a pint after the game. You know, it's not like a normal job. You don't answer to anyone. So yeah, I would say that is effectively what it's like. You know, I wish there was more support from other people. You know, I would say that chess is really the only profession where you don't get supported by your colleagues. In fact, they actively try to destroy you. They try to take your rating points. They want to just beat you. You know, so they don't support you. They don't help you. They don't like try to give you any tips or anything like that.
But to be honest, the game doesn't encourage you to do that. I mean, if you're a professional chess player, you have to think in a certain way to win tournaments, to win games against these guys. It's always been the same.
Exactly.
Chess players are very bad. You'll make a really good point at supporting each other.
I think there have been exceptions.
Just a sec. In the 1980s, after the British of Blackpool, I think it was 1988, we set up an organisation called the Association of British Chess Masters. Right. Malcolm, and there was a meeting at this British, and about 40 or 50 people came along. Everybody agreed it was a great idea. But then it faded out over time because nobody was interested in doing any work or providing any support or getting involved in meetings or discussions or anything. And so, in a way, chess players are their own worst enemy.
Okay, I want to take the other side of that. There have been cases, and I worked with a few people over time. It's like one-on-one training partners, and we got together. One of them was John Levitt, who we had on the show fairly recently. We met up a few times, and you know, we went to tournaments together, and probably both benefited from working together. And I also worked with a few other people. Danny Kopek, when he was in the UK. You know, I spent some time working with him, and he was very helpful because he was quite a cultured chess player. He didn't know any opening theory, but he recommended certain books which helped me, and he was big on endgames and stuff like that. And there've been better known examples as well. There's Gurevich and Chernin, who were both in Kharkiv as it was, and they worked together for like a year and became incredibly strong. And then there's also Tim and Anderson. So you can break the mold if you've got somebody that is willing to, you know, to work with you. And these guys, they usually played, when they played each other, they would be real games, right? So they sort of sequestered this thing whereby we can help each other improve, right? When it comes to a game, you know, we go back to kill mode. And they benefited a lot from the joint work. And I think in general it's been much more common in Eastern Europe than it has in the United Kingdom, you know, and maybe largely because of the people that are attracted to chess as a livelihood in the West. You know, that we tend to be slightly chaotic individuals who struggle to cooperate with ourselves, let alone somebody else. You know, whereas in East Europe, chess has got this tradition of being like a real profession, and it's attracted people who are not quite of the same individual bent, like, right? So they have been more willing to cooperate, right? But I think it's quite important if you do this. And you don't have a trainer, and who's got a trainer, you know, except for one or two, super juniors, to get over your lack of willingness. I've even worked with Andrew. Not a lot.
There you go.
We mainly did swimming and stuff.
That brought you down a long way, mate.
You know, but it's been quite a few people, and it was incredibly useful, especially as I had no coach. You know?
Yeah, I mean,
let's see Danny in action here, because we've got a really nice selection of games that. So why don't you take us through? Take us through.
You need to share the screen before we can see Danny in action.
Oh okay.
You can take us through this game against a really good young player.
So he's from Qatar, I think somewhere like Qatar or like the Middle East, and he beat Keith Arkle in the previous round. But Keith Arkle played, to me, honest, very typical of his style, which is going to like an ending. But I felt like, I wanted to keep the game reasonably complex against this guy and just go for a sharp middle game. So I prepared a Slav, which turned out to be a decent opening choice. So
I'm
shall
just
I
going to
play?
have to reshare the screen here because
Yeah.
it seemed to indicate there might be a technical issue. It said it was paused, and I don't know why that would have happened.
So you were able to do preparation for each individual game in this tournament, were you?
Well, that's a good question because, you get very limited time. So this game was a morning game, though. So I had...
What was the event? Sorry.
Yeah, so it was the Easter Open, Foreign CL Easter Open. So it's organised by the Foreign CL, which is a Four Nations Chess League, which runs the league chess, the main league chess in the country, where everybody meets up every occasional weekend, so 5 times a year. But they also run tournaments on the side. So it's run by a guy called Mike Duran, and they offer conditions in the hotel. So you got the hotel for free. I went down on the something like the Thursday, stayed overnight. The tournament started on the Friday, so it was a good idea to go down the day before. I think it was kind of relaxed. So basically this game would have been a morning game. So I played round 1, 2, and 3. Round 1 would have been 3 o'clock on the Friday, and then round 2 was 10 o'clock on the Saturday. Round 3, 3 o'clock on the Saturday, and then this would have been the Sunday morning game. So this would have been Sunday at 10 o'clock. And so I had time to prepare after the game finished. Also, I had an early finish on the Saturday, which helped. So I had quite a very quick game on the Saturday, very quick win against Jeremy Fallowfield. So I hadn't used much energy for that game, so I could use that energy to prepare for this obviously dangerous opponent. But yeah, there's always a problem that if you have certainly an afternoon game and you suddenly get paired probably 20 minutes before the game, you don't have time to prepare. And in fact, it's probably a mistake to try and prepare in that moment. You should try and just get your head in the right kind of frame of mind. I think that was my mistake in the last round. I should have tried to get my head in the right kind of frame of mind for playing Mark Hebden. Instead, I kind of got a little bit worked up and I didn't play very well and I played too quickly. But shall I play through the moves?
Please do. Go ahead.
Yeah, so this
Not
was
too quick, though. Not too quick, because...
Oh, sorry, not too quick. Yeah,
the audience is not on Grandmaster level.
Right. I try to remember that. So A6, this is like the Rogozenko Slav. And there's various ways that white can play against this in this position. Obviously, knight c3 after A6, knight c3 would be a very normal move. And then black has a choice between developing bishop to f5 or g4. And also black can play b5 at some points. Also, after bishop f5, interesting point worth making is after queen b3, you can actually, in these kind of positions, put your rook on a7. And it looks terrible on a7, but bear in mind that white is kind of, the queen now is rather pointless on b3. But later on, if you play b5, the rook can swing across. So I quite like the Rogozenko Slav for black. And I played it a few times. But also it had the benefit of that he wasn't necessarily expecting me to play this. So I do think that's a very important point. Sometimes you want to avoid your opponent's preparation.
Am I right in thinking you normally play the Grunfeld?
Grunfeld or Nimzo, I don't really have a recognised opening against d4. Like when I played against Andy Ledger in the British, I played the King's Indian and I got crushed. So, I mean, I probably need a better defence against d4 where I'm better prepared. And so really how I prepared for this game is by playing a lot of games on lead chess against the engine from this position. So I took the white side, the engine took the black side. Not necessarily because I wanted to play against the engine, but just to get an idea of the kind of positions, the right kind of plans, so just so I could navigate the opening without something really horrible happening, which is often the problem I have due to my lack of, really deep opening knowledge, I would say.
Very similar to a Queen's Gambit accepted, isn't it?
Exactly. But of course, you played A6. You played C6. So the fact is, you're going to lose a tempo because you're probably going to play C5 at some point. But it shouldn't be such an issue. Here, knight BD7. He went Queen B3, which is slightly unusual. And we got this position. In this position, I played the move B4, which I thought was a decent move. And I think I wasn't expecting him to put the bishop on T2. I was expecting him to play knight D2. So the main tactical point is if he now takes on B4, I go Queen B6. And he can't take on E7 because of Queen's hanging. So he played knight A3 after some thought. Yeah, and this was a critical position, actually. I think this was one of the critical positions of the game. And what candidate moves would you identify here, guys, for black, other than the move that I played?
I'm only looking at the move you played, actually. I mean, you'd look at B takes A3, probably. I would tend to trust my opponent rather than go through all the pain of working it out. But A5 is just like supernatural. Just
I agree with you. It's
C5 no good.
Sorry?
C5's no good.
C5.
Just a thought.
Yeah, that was the move that I thought was critical, but I couldn't quite calculate. Apparently, the computer says knight C4. Now, if you take on C5, this position.
Wow, can you do that?
Yeah, I wasn't sure if he could get away with taking the pawn or not because if I move the knight away at the moment, B7 is hanging. So if I go to something like knight D3, he's going to take on B7. So I thought here, I calculated bishop B5, and I thought I'm threatening knight B3. This looks quite dangerous for white, but I still wasn't sure about it. And I thought, this sort of position where you look like you've got very good compensation, but it could easily get away from you. And so I think something like Queen F4 was possible. And now if I go knight B3, he goes rook B1. And the point is, if I go bishop E4, the bishop E4 now looks like a good move. I think he's got bishop to C3, hitting my queen.
And indirectly the bishop.
And indirectly the bishop, because now he's threatening bishop F6. Exactly, good point. But it still carries on. I could play a move like Queen B8. So you have to calculate all this in the game, right? And this is where you sort of wonder whether I should be calculating this line or just playing a practical move that is fairly safe. And in weekend tournaments, you go for the practical move, right? Because you don't, if this wins by force, then it wins by force. But, from a practical point of view, I know that Mark Hebden and Keith Arkle, who are two weekend exponents, probably wouldn't even think about this line. They would just play 8-5 without even thinking.
Me too.
Yeah. But I'm like more. I'm trying to get to the truth of the position, and if it wins, it wins, right?
But bishop E5, what happens?
Well, that's the point. Yeah, bishop E5. So I did actually see all this in the game, and I wasn't sure because if Queen B7, now he can go bishop D3, for example. So I don't see a forced win for black. So, maybe, for example, I could cheat. I could switch on the engine. The engine now says after C5, D takes. Apparently, I'm winning.
Oh.
I can take on F3, which I didn't even see in the game, which is terrible miscalculation.
Then take the knight. Simple chess.
And then take the knight, yeah. So I calculated this really long line, and
it's a serious blow to your ego turning on that engine.
Yeah, exactly. But it just goes to show that all long variations are wrong. So taking with a knight is a big mistake because I can just take on everything. So C5 was probably objectively a slightly better move than A5, but it didn't really matter. I went A5, and so we got this position, and I wasn't sure what to play here at all. So you get these kind of middle game positions where you're really not sure what plan you should be adopting, where you should be putting your pieces. Should I play here? I've got many different moves I could play. I could play knight b6, for example. Should I be putting the bishop on d5? Should I put the knight on d5? Should I put the rook on c8? I think rook c8 here, for example, is a good move. Black has a lot of pluses. The fact that this pawn is isolated on d4. But there are also, the dangerous positions where maybe, for example, a5 can become weak. So if a5 crumbles in an endgame, then also b4 is likely to follow very soon after. So it's kind of, even though it looks quite good for black, it's kind of, quite balanced. So I went bishop d5 and I went knight e4, which I thought was fairly simple. He went bishop b5, I took on e5 and I went bishop d6. I was fairly happy with this because I realised after he went bishop d5 that suddenly he's threatening ideas maybe with knight d7. So my idea is after bishop d6, if he goes knight d7 now, I can just go queen h4. And if he pushes the pawn, I've got queen e4. It looks like white's in trouble. And if he defends against the threat, I could simply move the rook now, for example, if I need it. Probably there's other moves as well. I did actually.
He's going to play knight b6, yeah.
He's going to go knight b6, actually. Yeah, I forgot about this in the game. But I'd still think maybe bishop f4 here maybe is a move. And if he goes here, trying to go g3, I can just go rook b8. Oh, no, hang on. Yeah, he can take on d5 and still go g3. So, yeah, it still continues. The complications continue because if he goes h4, I've got queen g4. So I don't know. Maybe I'm just about okay here, but he's still got this move. And then
this is a very tough line to calculate at the board, isn't it?
Yeah, you want to avoid this kind of thing. And you're absolutely right, Andy. You want to avoid this kind of thing in, certainly weekend chess where you're trying to save energy. A lot of it is about saving energy. But I felt like he wouldn't go for knight d7. I mean, knight d7, I could just move the rook as well. Rook e8 is also a move. So I don't think he really gains much because I'm still covering b6. So he hasn't got this knight b6 idea anymore. So, but it looks dangerous to allow queen h4 anyway. So he went for rook c1. And this is where I went for simplification because, again, you're thinking practically. You're thinking, this kid is obviously quite a dangerous player.
Yeah.
Like a lot of kids these days, they're all kind of dangerous. He's confident. I don't really want to keep the pieces on and keep it complicated because I feel like he might well trick me. So actually, I want to keep the game fairly simple and just go for an end game where maybe I might be able to grind out the game. So I took on e5 and I went bishop b3. But I made a miscalculation here. I thought he was obliged to exchange rooks. Rook takes d8. And then actually, I think black has got a reasonable game because I'm just threatening just to push my pawn like g6 or g5 or h6 and then bring the rook to d2. And once I take on b2, he might be able to take on a5, but I think this b pawn is a lot more dangerous than his a pawn. But what I missed in this position, I suddenly realised, you can go rook d6. So I think that the ironic thing is, if I had seen that rook d6 in the game, I probably wouldn't have gone for this line at all. Because I miscalculated. I didn't see rook d6 when I took on e5. So I probably would have played something else, and who knows what would have happened. So it's ironic that sometimes you can make mistakes, and that can actually help you. Ignorance is bliss sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, if you keep calculating that much, you might lose on time.
Yeah. Exactly. I think that's why you need to train at home as well. I've been trying to train my calculation at home a bit lately because I noticed it wasn't up to shape recently. And you want to go from like the B from the bang. You want to be able to prepare that you're going to be able to calculate quickly at the board. So you're right. You're not using much time. I was probably quite fairly fast during the tournament. But yeah, fortunately, rook d6 is not that much of a problem because I don't need to take the rook on d6, and you can't reinforce it with rook d1 because the bishop's attacking that square. So now I can just start to consolidate. But here he made quite a bad move. Apparently his next move was quite a bad move. So my idea with G5 is that he couldn't reinforce the pawn on E5 with F4.
Yeah.
And my idea now is to go bishop B3 and rook D2. So if he goes for something like this, I can go here. He's got to waste a move. And now I can start coming down and start attacking his pawn. And but he does have a bishop E8 counterplay move. I don't know how strong that is. I'm not sure it actually really helps him that much. Like,
your B pawn is looking very strong.
He's looking very strong. So exactly, and it's quite. So I think apparently the best move I think here was something like F3. Just wait for the time being. You know, but I think it's all the chances are with black. I go bishop B3 and rook D2 at some point. So I think it's quite difficult to defend for white. He played bishop D7. That was apparently quite a bad move. I just went king G7. So I was tempted to go here in the game. This is where I kind of stop myself. I know I have a tendency. So sometimes it's worthwhile that you know your own weaknesses. And I know I have a tendency to relieve the tension at some point, like to exchange pieces. Because I feel like, you know, I'm somebody who suffers a lot from nerves. And when you're quite a nervous person, you know, the tendency can often be to just get pieces off and just make the position as simple as possible. It's not simple enough. The rook and bishop is not simple enough. So I want to go bishop C6. Tactical idea. So if he goes rook C8, I exchange and take on A4. So I win a pawn. So I think he has to take here. So I saw this variation in the game. I'm threatening mate. He hasn't got time for rook C5. But I thought he can go...
You're also threatening rook D5, aren't you?
I'm threatening rook D5, but I thought he could go... I mean, objectively, F3, rook D5 might be a draw anyway, because it's 4 versus 3, right? But there, I've still got the queen side. So, I mean, if you took away the queen side, it would definitely be a theoretical draw, but obviously you're suffering anyway. But I thought he could go G3 here. This is why I didn't play this. If I now go rook D2, he goes rook C5, it's a draw. So I have to go here. Now he goes F4. And...
Surely just
Bring
D2.
king up. I think Keith would have gone for this in a heartbeat.
No, I think
so,
He
yeah.
wouldn't have even thought about it.
black should go for rook D2 and swap one pair of pawns on the queen side because he can use his king.
He can't use his king. So you think this is winning, yeah?
I think, and now move the king up.
Move the king up. Yeah, I did look at this in the game. I think I looked at something similar, but I thought the problem is whenever I get the king to F5, he's going rook B7.
Surely
And
your B pawn can stop him. So, well, maybe not. I don't know.
yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I checked the engine evaluation. It probably says that black's winning here. No, it says it's a draw. Rook B5.
Okay, then you should start with rook A2 and not play king G7.
Do you need to exchange on F4? Can you just bring the king up? Because that seemed kind of quite early to exchange on F4.
Yeah. Well, G4 is actually very strong. So actually, in this position, black is better. Yeah, black is clearly better. So this was definitely an alternative. But I thought king G7 was actually a decent try. So I had to kind of fight against my tendency, which is to exchange pieces and just say, look, let's keep the tension. Because, you know, this kid is getting short of time. You know, I've got a lot of assets in this position. Don't panic, you know, and feel that you need to exchange pieces. And now I've got a threat of king G6 to F5 and then take an E5. If I get that in, I must surely be winning. So he's got to do something against that. I thought he had to go F3 here or some, apparently like maybe H4 or create some kind of counterplay. But he went G4. I think that's quite a bad move. Now I'm threatening H5. Yeah, H5. Now I'm threatening to take and go rook H8, for example. So he took. I did briefly think about king F5 and take, but I thought it's stupid to allow any tricks. You know, I can slowly win. I think that's one of the problems. You know, when I talked about in my book, guys, I said, like with amateur players, one of the problems that they have is they can't just make moves, you know, they can't just like let the position develop. You know, they always have to do everything immediately. It's almost like an existential urge to kind of do stuff. I don't know if you found that yourself working with amateur players.
It's often because they only know how to calculate or to do tactics.
Yeah,
They've often not really developed their positional play, so they're not like comfortable just with a good structure. So
yeah,
they
exactly.
gravitate towards forcing play because that's
Yeah.
what they've learned.
Well, it's interesting to see this kid's play because he's actually made two imprecisions here. He's made Bishop D7 and he's made G4. And
Mm.
it's interesting your view on those moves. I mean, you wouldn't be playing those moves yourself.
Probably not, but I can understand why he's in it. I mean, to be honest, like I say, one of the advantages you have over younger player like this, I think this kid's only like 18, he's obviously going to be a good player in the future, is your experience. But I feel experience can be an overrated, uh, you know, tool really, because in a way, if experience is just losing over and over again, doing the same thing over and over again, it'd be like that kind of thing that was attributed to Einstein, but apparently he never said, which was that, definition of stupidity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That is often people's, experience of experience, if you like. But if your experience is that you've accumulated a lot of knowledge over time and you're using that knowledge wisely, then yeah, I suppose I probably did have an advantage. And I think the other thing as well is that probably I'm an underrated grinder in end games. I'm probably, it's one of my main strengths is just, especially when I'm in form, is just to keep going and just keep plodding away. And I showed that in this tournament. I wasn't just one-dimensional guy who's very good in preparation. And if he doesn't blow them away in preparation, I've got nothing left. So, it was nice to win like end games. So I won 3 end games in this tournament. So that was quite, but yeah, go back to the game. So basically finished. So here again, I played a calm move. I was tempted to take on E5. I said, look, let's just defend the pawn first. And rook F8. He's got all these weaknesses now. And now he decided, well, if he takes on A5, I've got like very strong threats with bringing the rook to C. I think if he takes C, I was going to go rook here and then try to bring the rook to C1. So I think he understood the danger with his king on G3. So he went king G4. Now I could have played F6. I was very tempted to play F6. But I think I decided, right, I'm going to just defend that pawn on G5 with a king. And now I went rook C8. Very strong idea because the threat now is rook C1 to G1, starting to create a mate attack. So his king's now in danger. And, that's another thing that amateur players struggle with. The idea that you could attack in the endgame as well, not just in the middle game. So my pieces are far. You look at that bishop on D5 is controlling the whole board. His bishop on B5 is really doing nothing. Won't help his A pawn later either. Bishop on D5 is a great position. It can help the B pawn, and it could also stop the A pawn later on in the game. So basically, the game ended fairly comfortably for me. He went here, so black to play and win. Don't know if people can see this, or the move is already up on the board.
It's up there, unfortunately.
It's already up there, yeah. So I went here, and then possibly rook B3 is also winning. But I went here, which is quite a nice finish. And he can... maybe I could hide the moves for the next game and then show them the next game and hide the moves.
I don't know. Is there a hide moves function?
I think you could just click on that. I think you just click on the right-hand side. That hides the moves. Does that make sense?
What right-hand side?
Well, the right-hand side, anyway.
We could do like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, that was an excellent game, wasn't it? I mean, you really did grind him down there.
Yeah. Yeah, I really like that one. I like G5 a lot. It's a very a typical device. But you did something quite similar in the Turner game as well. You advanced your kingside pawns, which I thought was just technically very good.
Yeah.
That sort of game, it's not really a crowd pleaser, but to a strong player, it's a really excellent game because, there's no mistakes and you really outplayed him.
Well, that's it. I mean, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, I mean, I was reading about the Manila Olympiad. Ian Rogers was right about that. He said that Gary Kasparov was on the best games committee, and his 3 votes for the best game were all Kasparov games.
I'd do the same myself.
Yeah, exactly. And he said that he basically went up to himself and Sarah, because Roger's playing for the American team at the time, I think. And he said, you know, because Roger's game was like his main rival for the best game prize. And he said, "This is a disgrace. You know, this is like this game was a tragedy. The bishop was on h7. It was blocked by the pawn on g6. I mean, how can this game? There's something wrong with this game." And then he said, so when they did a committee, he said the best game that he played. Eventually, the prize got awarded for his game against Nikolic, which was quite a well-known game where he plays this martial attack and he sort of plays this slightly counterintuitive capture on e3 or something. But he said himself the best game that he had was against Ivanchuk, where Ivanchuk was black, and it was a very technical game. And he said the only people who would understand it were himself and Ivanchuk. You know, so it's not like a brilliant game. Doesn't look like a brilliant game, but yeah. Anyway, sorry. Shall I go on to the next game?
Well,
Yeah.
it just brings me to another question, actually, because obviously it's relevant to your opponent in this game. I mean, you're doing a lot of training these days. So what advice can you offer to talented young players who want to become a grandmaster these days?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, the first bit of advice I would say is just work hard. You know, I mean, the primary indicator of success in any activity is just to work hard. You know, that's something that I've struggled with. I've tried to do a bit more now because, you know, when I get bad results, I'm like, I shouldn't really be losing to that player. You know, I feel like I'm a stronger player and it annoys me. So really, the motivating factor is just annoyance and not wanting to lose. But yeah, I feel like we haven't had good players emerge in this country probably for a while. And I think there's a few reasons about it. I mean, one of the reasons is that you can make a much more comfortable living than being a chess player.
That's it. I mean, the amount of effort you have to put in is not proportional to the reward you gain.
Exactly.
This is the problem. And also, the odds are stacked against you in our culture because we don't have a culture that supports chess. So the odds are against you right from the start. They're astronomically high that you're going to be another David Howell or Luke McShane or Gawain
Absolutely.
Jones.
Yeah. And
what is it? 1 in God knows how many digits.
Yeah, I mean, you look at other countries and they're much more professional in the way they bring people together. Like all the Indians, they train with each other all the time. And they employ very like high-level coaches like Kramnik and everything. And so there are big advantages. And also when they're doing junior events, I'm hearing that they're going after the game and they're spending hours studying. Now, we don't necessarily have that culture in England because people are generally quite lazy and they... you know, like we said, like, you know, what's the incentive? If you got somebody who's like an IM, who's like a younger player, who's 24, 30, you know, and they're say 16, 17, 18, they're not going to carry on with chess. They're just going to get a normal job.
Or go to university.
Get
a girlfriend.
So, yeah, I mean, what would be my main advice? Yeah, I say work hard or... also study a lot of different positions because not just the openings that you know, a lot of kids now they spend all their time on chessboard and everything, right? Learning all these openings, that's great. But, you know, like study openings that you wouldn't necessarily play. So you get about, you look at Magnus Carlsen, who's got a very good all-round understanding of chess. He can play so many different positions well. You know, really the knowledge in chess, you can never get enough knowledge, right? So you have to like, you know, that's what Nigel was talking earlier about people working with each other. You know, one of the things I noticed, you know, because I've been on the weekend circuit for years, I have picked up stuff from people like Mark Hebden and Keith Arkle. You know, like the way, like Keith's knowledge of endgames, for example, like Mark is very good at analysis and he's, you know, very also good at endgames, but also very good in the opening. So you pick up little bits of pieces of knowledge from bits and people, you know, You're
Yeah.
almost like a magpie. You're picking up stuff from people. Do you know what I mean? Like a sponge sort of thing. So, but yeah, move on to the next game. I was playing against Yi Chen, who's quite a promising young player from the Netherlands. And
Yeah,
so I decided, yeah, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Go on.
Yeah, well, I want to say something. I was struck by the fact that you moved away from the Nidorf, because I was going to ask actually how you found. I mean, you've been associated with the Sicilian Nidorf and also with the Grundfeld, right? Which are two openings that, I mean, I would describe them as like on the, the high maintenance side of things. In this day and age with computer analysis. So I was just interested. I know you switched against him here. Was that deliberate because you knew he'd be prepared?
Well, exactly. I mean, we saw in the game that he played like a sideline because he wasn't necessarily expecting me to play the rouser. Now, part of the reason I did that was because I've been working on the rouser recently for Simon Williams' website, which is like an encyclopedia of opening variations. So I've been working on the rouser. I played the rouser before. It wasn't the first time I played it. But, more I looked at the positions, I was, playing training games against the computer and everything. I quite like the positions that would arise, They're very, very... I think the Nidorf has been worked out.
After that move, that's the rouser, isn't it?
That's the rouser, yeah. Or the Sozin would be bishop c4, yeah?
It's a classical variation.
Yeah, the classical variation. But against a6, I was expecting him to play the bishop g5 Nidorf, and I have a very bad record against bishop g5 Nidorf, mainly because it's very memory-based. And you get a lot of scary variations where white ends up sacrificing early in the game. And people think that I'm some kind of calculation machine. I'm probably good at calculating when I've got the advantage. But when my opponent's attacking me, I don't really like it, Like...
Who does?
No, exactly. Especially when you have to... I remember I played this game in tournament in Amsterdam, played Batavia, and I was playing this German guy. He's quite a good player, actually. He was about 2580 at the time, but now he's over 2600. And we played the bishop g5 Nidorf, and I lost. And afterwards, he showed me like this long variation where I have to basically memorize to make a draw. And I thought, this is... This isn't chess at all, right? I mean, this is just another game entirely. It's just depressing. I don't want to play chess like this. So how do you function in a Sicilian? I've got good understanding. If you can play the Nidorf, you can play the rouser as well, basically. Similar kind of positions, right?
Can't you transpose from a bishop g5 Nidorf into some lines of the rouser? You just go knight c6 somewhere.
Well, but where though? Because if you go knight c6 here, they might take on f6 and you get a double pawn position. If you go e6 f4 knight c6, that is considered a dubious variation for black.
Yeah, it's the it's knight c6 allowing bishop takes f6. I think there was a which
right.
some rouser lines, and I think there was a Kasparov Short game where Short played bishop g5 against Kasparov's Nidorf. And Kasparov played knight c6, and probably he was surprised that Short had prepared bishop g5 for him. And Kasparov had lost before against bishop g5, actually, against in the Malta Olympiad in 1980. There was a shock loss against a Bulgarian where he got annihilated.
All right. I'll have to look at that game.
Yeah,
was it someone like Delchev or something like that?
Somebody. I might guess Georgia, but
Kirill Georgiev. Yeah.
Without specifying which one, I think it might have been somebody else.
Someone older. Yeah, someone older than Georgiev. Yeah.
I mean, your move order trick in the opening really did work because he played a kind of innocuous line, didn't he? Bishop b5.
Yeah.
What's that?
Yeah. So he's actually played h4 here, and funny enough, he said after knight c6, he's played h4 here.
H4 is that a move?
Well, he reckoned there's only one way to equalise here, but he said that, as black, if you know the line. Well, no, I think it was some other move. Maybe it was. Oh, it was something with h6. So you go like e6 here, maybe, and then you go for like h6. But I
So
was vaguely prepared against h4.
so
I
bishop
think,
b7 and it doesn't equalise. a6 doesn't equalise.
yeah. I mean, I was probably going to go e5, but he said that this line is worse for black.
Well, h6.
Uh, well, I mean, he should be unclear, really. Objectively speaking, it should be unclear. You know, I mean, how can I be losing after
Terrible.
h4?
It looks terrible. H4.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I agree. It looks terrible. It's a bit of it's a risk. So I was expecting bishop g5 because given that he plays bishop g5 against a Neidl, it would have been logical to play bishop g5. But he went bishop b5, which looks like a terrible move, like a beginner's move. But funnily enough, it's actually not that bad because I was actually looking at this for the stuff that I was doing on the website. And but there's a moment later on. So he goes here.
Alekin used to play, I think he played in a couple of games, bishop g5, e6, bishop b5.
That's the Vitalich variation, isn't it? I think you'll find.
Yeah, but Alekin, I think, played it.
Did
He
he?
played the Rouser, but I think there were some games where he played a very early bishop b5 as well.
Yeah, I mean it's not that stupid because the thing is sometimes white wants to take on c6, and even allow black to take with the pawn. You know, computers love all this kind of thing because, like, for a human, it's very scary to open the b file. The computer will just understand there's no mate on the b file, and it actually the attack. There isn't really an attack. So the main move here, and I think this is where he wasn't very well prepared, was to take on c6. And after b takes c6, go knight b3. In the post-mortem, I mean, I did a post-mortem with him afterwards. I thought, actually, I was quite impressed with him, like, in the post-mortem. I thought he's quite an objective player and he sees a lot. And generally with you...
White's
Sorry?
White's threatening e5, is he?
Yeah, white's threatening e5. So if I do something like this, he can play e5. And maybe take here and go, well, I've got a threat of here now, c5 you've got to watch out for.
Yeah, queen
maybe
d4.
Just or queen d4, exactly. And you're controlling this square. You already play f4 and g4.
Doesn't look great.
Yeah. So I think this would have been a logical continuation. So even though black looks like he's doing well with it, with the open b file and the two bishops, maybe this is quite a dangerous variation for black. So it might be worth.
Could you try knight g4 there? d5, e5.
Yeah.
G4.
Yeah, that's a good point. So knight g4, but one was if he goes here though anyway.
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah.
You're right. You're right.
Yeah. Hitting g4, and then if queen g5 has got f4.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, it's not that easy for black. So that's what I was expecting. But he played a move which probably wasn't the best, f4. And I went here. And, here he made quite a big mistake. For example, what he could have done. So I think Michael Adams did annotations of this game on his in his column, and he does quite detailed annotations, and I think he does a lot. It puts a lot of effort into the variations. I think I vaguely remember he was recommending something like this, and then rook g1, and the idea is to go g4, just simply to go g4 and attack on the king's side, and that would have been quite interesting. It's not a variation I considered during the game. I thought he would take on c6 actually at some point. That was why I put the rook on c8 so that I could take out the rook and keep some kind of coordination in the position. But instead of that, he blundered here. He went knight f3. It's quite a bad blunder, and it's already a losing move, believe it or not.
Wow.
So I started to think, so I'd seen this move when I was calculating. I thought, maybe I'll just go A6. But then when I got to this position, that's often what you experience. You start to think, that's why you need to take a pause sometimes and start to think about, have I got any other moves? So that's when I saw knight B4 is really a problem for white, because if he moves the queen to, say, D2, well, I can take on B5 and then C2's hanging. If he goes queen D4, I've got knight takes A2 and then take on B5 and I just win a pawn for nothing. And his king's side is now depleted. So that can't be good for white. So he played a natural response, which is queen E2. I think this is tactically careless, this knight F3, because now this was my main idea. Rook takes C3, very thematic sacrifice in the Sicilian.
Very nice.
Yeah, and it just works tactically because now he has to take. If he takes on D7, I take on C2, winning the queen. So more or less, he has to take. I took on A2. I took on C3. Queen A5 check. So I win back the piece. So I could just take on B5 here, and this would obviously be very good for black because I've got 2 pawns for the exchange. Normally, when you take on C3, you don't even necessarily win material. You don't even win pawns for the. It's just the fact that you're breaking up the king position.
Yeah.
But here I've already got 2 pawns, and its king is very exposed, so it must be good for black, right?
Yeah, I mean,
But
queen b4 check just looks stronger, doesn't it?
Yeah, I went queen b4. So I checked in here. And now I did vaguely think about just repeating, but I thought that would be ridiculous. Now, if it was a last round, I was half point ahead and he was the only one who could catch me, I might have well repeated. But the thing is, we still had a round to go. So I needed to win to be clear of the field. Otherwise, I would have been half a point ahead of Hebden. And that was part of the reason I played the Sicilian again. I did think about playing the Petrov against Jan or something solid. But I thought if I play the Petrov against Yi Chen and then make a draw, Hebden on the next board is going to sense weakness. He's going to sense that I'm nervous. I'm just trying to win the tournament.
Yeah.
And he'd only be half a point behind me at that point. And in the end, I lost that game anyway. So I think it was important to try and send out a message that I'm there to play and just, so... Yeah, I went for this, and this is just winning. Yeah, so I bring the rook into the game. Now I've got all these threats like rook c3, bishop a4, and it was a nice move here, which is a very natural move. I don't know if you can guess the move.
Unfortunately, it's there.
Oh, is it already there? Is it? Oh, okay, so I'll forget that then. I forget. Maybe I'm just changing it on my own settings. I'm just changing it on my own settings. So D5 is the move. Yeah. So I basically, because I was studying the Richter a lot, I know it was like these old games like Kramnik, Ivanchuk Kramnik, where black would blow open a position at some point with this move D5. Yeah. And often after the exchange sacrifice as well. And so again, we're talking about knowledge. Knowledge of games is very important. Knowledge of different positions that you might not even necessarily play. I normally play the NIGEL is very important. So D5, and suddenly if threatening moves like bishop A3 check, bishop B4. If he takes on D5, bishop B4 is crushing because this is just like if he moves a king, I have knight takes D5, and then I'm just 2 pawns up with an attack, so he might as well resign. And if he goes queen B3, I have, well, black to play and win is a nice win here.
Well, you've got. I won't say it, shall I? Shall I say it? Or will you Nigel?
Yeah, this is the way to win the game. So he went
doing tactics practice lately.
Yeah, this is very close to the end of the game because now I'm threatening bishop c3 with a mate, and again we already established that rook b4 is not going to save him. So he went bishop e1. And now, very nice finish. Rook takes c2, and he resigned. If he carries on, this is basically forced checkmate. Like he can't go to d1 because I've got bishop a4 mate next move. He can go to c1. Now, apparently, bishop a4 is the quickest way to mate him. But I was actually just going to go here, and this is quite a nice. I'd seen this nice finish. I go Queen D1, and if he goes Bishop D2, I've got Bishop C2, mate.
That is nice.
Yeah, and it again say the thing after Knight D2. He can go here. Obviously I can take the Queen if I want, still winning, but I would have gone here and then Knight G4, mate.
That's very nice as well.
Yeah.
No, do you know if you played that in a British Championship all those years ago, you might even have won Game of the Day for that.
Yeah, I wouldn't have won best game prize. I would have gone to get him.
What was the prize for Game of the Day, by the way? Was there a prize?
Oh, you mean in the British Championships?
Yeah.
It was £100.
I think
right.
There was.
Well, when
there
they
was 1 year, but that was only 1 year, wasn't it? Was it 1 or 2 years? Maybe they did that.
That was in Liverpool. They had a proper sponsor, and then it faded to nothing. It was £100 for the whole event. You know.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like it's a sad reality that so the British Championships is not very well supported, and they now have a Chessable, because Chessable are making all this money supposedly, or they've got all this liquid cash. They're now supporting the English Championships. So there's Chessable English Championships. There's also Chessable British Championships. So hopefully the first prize of the Brit. But the problem is all the top guys will turn out anyway, like Michael Adams and.
Well, it's £5,000, isn't it? It's £5,000.
Is it £5,000?
2.25 for second, and then so on down to 7.
Have they already published the prizes?
They're published somewhere. Nigel had it on.
Yeah,
Facebook.
I did. I couldn't find the prizes at first. I asked people, you know, am I as blind as a bat here? Why can't I see the prizes? And then somebody helpfully posted the link, but I couldn't find the link to the prizes from the main page. But it's like it's 5,000 first, and there's 5 prizes.
So even though, even though Chessable are putting this money in, they haven't boosted. I mean, that's ridiculous. So where is the money going? You have to question, where is the money going?
Actually, you can't actually get the amount of money Chessable have put in. Apparently, I read this on the English Chess Forum that they're not, ECF are not allowed to say, or they're not saying.
Well, it's probably it's going to their back pockets, or going into their bank account and just staying in their bank account, and not. I think they just use it as reserve cash. When it should be going into the tournament itself.
I have asked about GM conditions. I haven't had a reply yet. You know, because it staying in Torquay for how long? 9 days.
Probably cost you like £1,200 or something.
It's gonna be expensive.
Very expensive.
Yeah.
More than that.
Depends where you stay, of course. You know.
Well, even if you stand
on the beach,
it's going to cost you 60 or 70 quid a night.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, when I played the last time, I did a commentary, but I feel like I'm too strong to do the commentary, or I feel like I should be trying to win the tournament.
You should be playing. You should be playing.
Should be playing, yeah. So, but I stayed slightly like out of town, which wasn't quite so expensive.
Yeah.
But yeah, generally speaking, professional players in this country aren't supported. Certainly not by the federation. So you effectively.
It's not a cheap place to stay. It's a proper holiday venue.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, and probably I should be trying to book a hotel now, because either the prices will get too high. I was actually looking up prices for the St Andrews because there's like I follow golf and like bet on golf and this rubbish, right? I've got a ticket for the British Open, like it's in July. So I was looking up prices for St Andrews, which is where you're nearby, which is where the golf is. Yeah. And they said, I think the average price for like 3 days stay was about £5,000. So I thought, if I win the British, then I could just about afford to.
Well, I don't know. You were good at commentating with Adam Hunt, so you could do that if you really wanted to try and make some money. I mean, I don't know. Maybe you can get a good deal.
It's more relaxing in the comment, as you probably understand. Andy. I mean, your commentary was always well received. I remember you did it with Ravi. Was it Ravi Kumar? Yeah. So you were like the doyen of British commentators. The pre Lawrence Trent and Simon Williams, but it's more relaxing, as you probably know. It's much more relaxing doing the commentary than actually playing, which is very stressful.
Yeah.
So I far more enjoyed doing the commentary, but on the other hand, you feel like, I've never won the British.
Well, you're playing so well.
You were second, weren't you? You were second equal. Was it once or twice? So you were.
Yeah. I think 3 times actually. I think I was the first time I was second was in the Scarborough British, which was about early 2000s when Joe Gallagher won it after he had a quick draw with Keith Farquhar in the last round. Keith needed a win to win the tournament, but he was under pressure, like financially, so he agreed a quick draw. If that happened in other sports, there'd be outrage, right?
Yeah.
It'd be like, what the hell's going on? The guy who needs to win. It's like if you're 2 shots behind Tiger Woods going to the last round of the golf course, you just say, look, Tiger, I'll accept that you're going to be ahead by the end.
They won't accept your answer.
You can't help but think it must have been worth taking the risk because, British champion, it comes with a certain kudos as well.
Well, so that's it. I think Keith experienced what a lot of professional players experience, which is the fact that you're often under pressure financially. I mean, just to give you an idea, 2015 was probably my golden chance to win the British because I was playing incredibly well. That's probably one of the best tournaments of my life. I drew with David Howe. I was winning at one point later on. He was winning earlier in the game, it must be admitted. But I beat Jonathan Hawkins. So I had 1.5 out of 2 against the 2 top seeds. Second week, I just went into a draw-up, which I often do in the last weeks of British, because obviously you're playing good players as well. Like you're on board one or two every round. You're playing very good players. Yeah. But yeah, I'm white against people like John Ems, white against Richard Pert. No disrespect to them, but those are winnable pairings. I'm drawing both of them fairly quickly.
Yeah.
And then in the last round, I'm playing Aaron Summerscale. If I win, I'm in a playoff. With Jonathan Hawkins, but the problem is I got no money. So like I get to a position where I could play on, but I don't see a way to ever be better. But you still never know what might happen. If you play on, you might win. He might blunder or something. But the problem is if I lose the game, I'm going to win 50 quid. So I played a great tournament. I've been up there the whole tournament, and I've lost one game, and I, end up winning 50 quid. It feels like an absolute shame, a tragedy. Or I could draw, and then I'm guaranteeing like 1,500 quid, or whatever. So I ended up making a draw, and that's the sad reality of a lot of these tournaments, that you're under pressure financially, and you shouldn't be like that. It should be a lot more money.
Well, that brings me to my final question, really. I mean, you might like to create some more, but how do you view the current chess scene? What does the future hold in the UK?
Well, I mean, I think it's going to go a lot more online. I mean, the problem is there seems to be this obsession now with online tournaments. So chess is very easy to sell through Twitter, through Twitch, like what we're doing now. And you're going to get less and less over the board tournaments, which I think is a shame, because, the satisfaction I got from winning these games, you don't get that from online play.
Yeah.
Like you say, if you can't afford the accommodation or the travel and the food, to go to a tournament, why would you go?
Well, exactly. I mean, I read something recent. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was reading Keith Arkle's book, Arkle's Endgames, and at the back of the book, Simon Williams is saying, I sort of commend these guys like Mark Hebden, Keith Arkle, for going around the country for, God knows how many years and still doing it now. Because Simon realised very early on, it's much easier to just sit at home and do the chess, do some videos, make a lot more money that way. Why should you go and slog? I mean, I could have played Nottingham Congress last weekend. I did think about it. The first prize was 750 quid. So I would have had a decent chance of winning it. But I thought, A, it's a strong tournament, and B, you're not guaranteed to get anything back. And also I'm probably going to, my total expenses are going to be close to 300 quid. So
that's it.
Yeah, I feel like it will be increasingly become, I feel like in British chess, we need to have somebody there who's trying to make better case for sponsorship, you know, and you need to have a better relation between, you know, the players and the organisers, where they're more transparent. You know, there's no transparency. There's no, you know, where is this chessable money going? You know, I mean, just to give you an example, the tournament I just played, the 4NCL tournament, I was seeded, even though I was top on FIDE ratings, I was seeded third or fourth seed because they used English rates.
Yeah.
There's no kind of, you know, dialogue with the players where they say, like, you're the professional players, you know, what do you want to do? Like, they just ignore us.
Well, what is striking is, of course, you're a top grandmaster, a professional player, and you have to pay everything when you go to these tournaments. You know, okay, you mentioned the 4NCL, they gave you a hotel. Okay, that's a one-off, isn't it?
The 4NCL is probably the best deal when you look at the expenses, the expense ratio.
I mean, it's crazy if you want to go to a tournament like Nottingham and you're paying out 300 quid just to play as a grandmaster. Absolutely unbelievable, really. I can't quite believe it.
Yeah, I mean,
and then you've got to take the sort of 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 punt that you might win the first prize.
Absolutely. I mean, I think that all the money that's been made online now, there's all these Twitch streamers, there's all this kind of people that's making gazillions, there's websites that are making ridiculous amounts of money. More of that should be funneled back into tournaments over the board, in my opinion, and help the, you know, I mean, for example, chess.com are just organising like a world championship or what they call is a world championship, chess.com world championships. But the reality is that, I mean, the money there, that, you know, they're doing huge prize money, you know, which is great. But the reality is all it's going to do is just go to people like Nakamura, who are already rich anyway. It's not going to go into like players like myself. Now, that's understandable because they are much better players than me, right? You know, Magnus Carlsen, Nakamura. But you could, in my opinion, you could do a much better job of supporting players throughout the spectrum. You know, if you basically have a better relationship with and say, look, these websites are making a hell of a lot of money from, you know, why are there so many people online? Because a lot of them, they follow Grandmaster games. I was playing a game the other night, you know, there's 250 people watching my game. I don't get a penny from it. No. So I spend all these hours playing on Lead Chess or chess.com. I never get a penny. It's all the websites, they're making money, right? So I feel like there should be more money funneled back into chess from these websites.
What I think is a bit of a shame is that now it's just a small number of people who are being invited to tournaments. There's not sort of more, you know, more general tournaments and also, you know, with things like commentary and, you know, there's now a kind of chess has set out its stall around like a few stars and, you know, good-looking Twitch streamers. You know, we're only jealous, but
we are
jealous, right? You know, and you know, and all the you know, all the publicity is around sort of that is what chess is, right? Well, it's not. You know,
exactly.
And
I
think,
point.
you know, I mean, I think there are a lot of unrecognised players and also unrecognised organisers. There's people that are running junior chess and they don't get a penny for it, you know. And
I think these are very good points. And I would say is you're absolutely right, Nigel. And I mean, that's part of the reason why I'm actually very pessimistic about chess, because I feel like I'm going to drop out of chess. I'm looking for a way out. Because firstly, I don't really like the lifestyle. Basically, you're sitting around the house all day. In recent years, I've become increasingly bored with all that. Yeah. And I wonder why I didn't break out of it. It's difficult, though, now I'm 45, to actually change my career.
You're a young thing. You can do a degree. Find something interesting. Do a degree. You'll get a student loan. Because it's what I did. And I'm not sure I chose the right subject in the end. I had to realise that maybe computing wasn't for me. But then I pride forced me through it, and I got a first in the end, right? And I could see doors opening up that would open wider if I wasn't, 61.
Yeah, what you said actually about focusing on one or two is absolutely right, because they see that, you know, at the end of the day, these are businesses, they're money making exercise. They see that X player is selling X amount of videos or whatever, or doing very well in commentary. They're just going to employ that person, so nobody else is going to get a chance.
Yeah.
And this is what I feel like. I feel like, you know, Simon Williams is a good friend of mine, but I do feel a little bit jealousy towards him, if I'm totally honest, because he's very, very successful broadcaster, and he deserves to be, because he's a very hard worker and he's very, very popular and funny. But I feel like, you know, I would like that. And I feel like, in a way, all I am is like a low-class Simon, you know, like, it's horrible to say, but, you know, it's like, I can't achieve this level of success that he's had. So therefore, people love my books, you know, but they've never been big sellers, never been huge sellers. You know, maybe they're like a niche thing where they're kind of intellectual and they're talking about the harsh conditions, and not necessarily everybody's loving that, right? Some people are loving it, but
very few chess books sell that well, Danny.
No, it's true.
The market is really, really flooded now, and you also appeal to the serious improver, right? Which is, I mean, I see that as like the honest side of the market, but it's not very attractive. Right, the more attractive one is the instant improvement for very little effort. Right, you come clean about this. You know, if you want to get better at chess, you've got to put some work in. Right, this is not a very attractive message.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, I love chess, but the thing is, I feel like I want to do other things. You know, it's almost like I have this desire to sort of prove myself in another capacity. I don't want to be like, you know, look at Mark. I talked about Mark Hebden and Keith Farquhar a lot. You know, they're guys, they're great guys. They've done a lot for chess and everything. But I feel like all their life is just completely devoted to chess.
Yeah.
And I don't really want to do that. You know, I want to do other things where outside of chess. Yeah. You know, like I want to write books that are like people heard of that. But it's hard to do, because if you try and do that, like if I write a chess book, I know I'm probably going to get a publisher. If I write a book outside of chess, more likely than not, I'm not going to get a publisher. You'd have to self-publish on Amazon to get any kind of. You see what I'm saying?
I think you have to face the fact that if you want to do that, that 99% of the effort is got to come from you.
Yeah,
exactly. Nobody's going to help you to do it. You'll have to. That is the nature of the chess world. Unfortunately, you're going to have to do it yourself.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is very tough.
Yeah. Well, one thing that has struck me though, you know, after I got this degree, if I was younger, then my prospects would be very good. And by younger, I mean if I was like your age, you know, which is, you know, because then you're still in the game. And, you know, when you're my age, because I got a first, you know, I did well, you know, but I could see that I looked at one or two things I applied, and I felt that age was a factor in me progressing any further. And I can see that, you know, in a few years' time, I might start to get really tired, you know, and old and doddering.
Yeah.
You know, but you've got time for sure, you know.
But also, I feel like with chess, good points you made, Nigel. I feel like with chess, it's like a cutthroat thing.
Yeah.
And it's very stressful. And do you really want to be going around when you're 55, 60, 65, still trying to play and trying to make money from tournaments?
Well, the game now is simply in commentary, writing and teaching. That is the game.
Exactly.
At the moment. So you're going to have to either accept that or do other things. That is it. And play chess for fun.
Yeah.
Which, you know, just accept that you're top GM, but you've got to play chess for fun.
Well, I mean, I already said basically that I make most of my money, or the small money that I make is mostly from other things like Chessable video. I mean, Chessable is huge now, right? You know, I don't even like Chessable, to be totally honest with you. Yeah. I shouldn't really say that on the. That's it. That's contract. But I mean, I wouldn't say I don't like it. But what I mean is, in terms of the actual repetition of memory.
Yeah, the move trainer, brainwashing.
I never used that. Right?
Yeah.
But I mean, I like some of the course. I mean, you can read it. You could just read the course online, right?
Yeah. Go through it with a chess set.
Exactly. Yeah, but it's huge, and yeah, I mean, so I think part of the reason why they've been so successful, actually, Chessable, is because they pay a very good percentage to the GMs, or to anybody who does a course for them.
Yeah.
So they're paying like 40. It used to be 50%. Now it's 40% because they sold out to play Magnus.
Yeah.
Most publishers, they don't pay anything like that. Like if you write a book, the percentage you get as an author is not very good.
Yeah.
Something's puzzling me about Chessable. I mean, I always, when I go into their pricing structure is baffling. I don't understand it. You look at this whole list of courses and they give some absurd price, like 2 hours of video with Danny Gormally, 300 quid.
Yeah. Well, actually, my courses aren't that expensive. I know Simon did one. I think it was on the Iron English or something like that, and that was like £300 plus. And I thought, I mean, to be honest with you, like, I would never buy any kind of video.
But then they offer you some immediate massive discount, don't they?
Yeah, well, this is your standard marketing.
Price. It's almost as if you're getting a bargain. They offer you 50% off 300 quid, but it still costs you 150 quid. So I just don't understand that.
Well,
I think you tried to tell me once, Danny, that it was because of the Americans were buying all these things.
Well, yeah, I mean, basically they've effectively copied, I think, the marketing strategy of iChess, who probably copied that from someone else. But the idea was you basically sell them at like a very high rate. So ChessBase, for example, they sold their videos at a much more reasonable rate, like 29,
90.
Yeah, probably 30 euros. I mean, you know much better than me, but I did one video for ChessBase and didn't sell particularly well. It sold okay. But iChess basically, they just decided, right, we're going to sell the videos very high, a very high price, because there's X amount. So they calculated X amount of Americans who are probably just going to buy a lot of these courses.
Yeah.
And you rather do that than actually sell it. You make more money that way. So Chessable are actually doing the same thing, and they've been very successful. And
I think it's important to have a look at their accounts. I mean, they started out by raising $48 million on the stock market, right? How far through the 48 million they are, is something that would need to be checked, and you probably need like an accountant to go through that.
Somebody said the other day that they're in the red. They're like millions, in debt or whatever. But I don't know. I mean, whether that's like financial, that they're just pumping money into the company, and then in theory, in the long term. I mean, I spoke to the guy who's now the Chessable CEO, which is a guy called Gert, and he said that play Magnus. They don't make any, they make a loss because they don't monetize the app very well or whatever. But he said, or Chess24, but he said Chessable do a good job of that. So whether, in 5 or 6 years time, and the other thing is, 5 or 6 years down the line, there might be another website that pops up that basically
Praggable.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, the amount. I mean, Geary has got like courses on Chessable, and the amount of money that he must make from Chessable is frightening. I mean, we should change this to the Jealous Show. We should change it.
Yeah. I don't know how.
I think we better shut this show down before it gets shut down.
Yeah. It's sort of like court order from Chessable.
That's right.
Yeah. But okay. Well, I suppose we better wrap things up before we get the lawsuits in. Thanks very much for coming on our show. And just to remind everybody of the give your book another plug.
Yeah, so basically, this Pandemic Shark, which has got a nice little blurb there at the back there, and it's really talks about what it's like, not just for amateur players to improve, but also I talk about, what the difference is between myself and someone like Magnus Carlsen. So I talk about, well, they just know a lot more theory than I do, and you know, you see that in their games, and that's a lot of that is hard work. Obviously, talent as well maybe plays a part, but it's mainly they've just got a much more professional attitude than me. You know, they're not going down the bookies like spending all their time on Netflix. You know, they're very serious people, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
Well, you're welcome to come back on the show anytime, because we didn't get to look at all of your games. You know, just a couple of games.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm always like I like appearing on stuff like this because I was like exchanging like views with people, and you know, you guys are very like you got a good understanding of history of chess. You're not like, you know, kind of doled up streamers who basically like brain dead. So you get a jealousy bit in your book going.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Should just do one with just do an embittered rant against everybody. Whoever's making
anyone who's making more money than we are. Yeah. Yeah. Well, thanks very much again. Very good luck at the bookies if you end up there today. Hope you hope you absolutely kill it. And then it's just Andrew and I will be jealous, and we'll see you soon, I hope.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, thanks a lot for having me.
Cheers, Danny. Thanks a lot.
Okay.
Mate. Bye.
Yeah. Thank